Bumblebee, transform.
You know I can't do that, Prime.
I thought you were made of starter stuff. Bumblebee 2, you're with me.
Yay! You've gotta be kidding.
Okay, people, welcome back to another Fwoosh review. Today, let's take a look at the ThreeZero MDLX Transformers Bumblebee. Okay, right off the bat, special thanks to ThreeZero for sending this out so I can mess around with it. I am super excited about their MDLX line where they take 80s designs and update them, but not in the same way that the Michael Bay movies or even the Bumblebee movie did. They're taking all of that classic cartoon design and weathering it up as if the cartoon were to come out today or something. I'm just an 80s kid. But first impression, right out of the shipping box, oh, this is smaller than I was imagining. The solicitation did have the size listed in there, so that should have softened the blow. That should have got me ready, but it's a completely different beast when you get something in hand. You know that. We'll see. We'll see. Taking a look at that package, there's a lot going on. There's an Autobot symbol-shaped window. You can see the figure inside. I'm guessing there's some accessories or something down here behind this graphic. On the side, a better look. I don't know if that's a promo shot or just some artwork, but either way, it looks fantastic. Hologram! Can't bootleg it. On the back, more action shots and a reminder that it does come with a different head, so there are accessories down there. Down here's the different languages, the warnings, choking hazards, small parts. This is too expensive to put in your mouth, really. On the other side, Transformers Bumblebee Autobot symbol on top. Same thing, different order on bottom. Barcode, ThreeZero logo. But let's get this open and see what's going on here. Going back to the window, you see the figure in there, but they've wrapped it in plastic, so you can't really see what's going on. So I get the marketing. Oh, there's no tape. As if it were on a shelf or something, but at the same time, you don't actually see this thing until you get it out of there, and the accessories are lined up down here. Transformers instructions? No, it doesn't transform. This is just pop the heads, pop the hands, use the articulation, try not to crash. It probably scratches something. Drop down hip, move some parts out of the way. Delicate areas, delicate areas. Oh. Ooh. And I can't help it. There's a cuteness factor. But I also feel like if you called this Bumblebee cute, he'd throw you a beating. He wouldn't even need to pull his gun. He would just kick the hell out of you. Like I said, there's definitely an 80s aesthetic to it, especially down here. Just look at the VW front end. I drove a Volkswagen Bug for several years, and man, even if I wasn't into Transformers, this is kind of a nostalgia pool. This being unmistakably Bug, I wish the chest was kind of designed in the same way, but it kind of flattens out what I feel like are VW curves. And I'm not jumping straight into gripes. I'm just putting it out there that I would have liked to seen it a little bit more iconic Volkswagen. But I get why they went this direction too, how they flatten things out. It gives it more of a warrior look. If it had been curved, I guess it would have come off as softer or something. But I love all the panel lines and the details, the robotic bits and bobs. You can even see gears back here in the chest, under the arms. It almost seems like a robotic under chassis with car parts on top, which also speaks to the engineering on this figure itself. Because there's a lot of die-cast parts, but there's also plastic covering. So it's durable, but it's not as heavy as you would think when it comes to die-cast. I was also iffy about the heavy black in the panel lines, but now that I have it in hand, and it's kind of counterbalanced by some dirtiness, some grittiness, some rust here and there, it totally works. Especially when you get to the darker parts. It almost seems very like realistic under here, and the outside is meant to be, I hate to use the word silly. In terms of battle, it would almost make enemies drop their guard and think, well, he's not a threat. Ba-boom! But what's crazy about all the yellow and the silver and the black and the dirtiness is that you turn it around and there's more detail. Some other companies would have thought, well, it's the back. We don't have to put that much work into it. But ThreeZero, they almost put more work into the back. There's some red down here and some piping running up and some more silvers, and it's so detailed. There's something to look at every time you turn it around. Even on the inside, the tire, again, this is a Transformer that doesn't transform, but they made it seem like it would transform. The tires all turned up underneath, flat foot, and even crazier, they're separate pieces. You can roll them inside that assembly. It serves no purpose, didn't need to do it, but it's the extra mile. And like I always say, extra miles are appreciated. There's even good detail to the hands. Well, simulated joints, I guess. The fingers don't move, but it almost seems like they would. Then there's the head, the likeness, and Even if this was just floating around and you had it without the body, you'd go, that's Bumblebee. And not just because it's yellow. It has the iconic horns. Slight smile that comes off as playful, but also cocky at the same time. Blue piercing eyes in the sea of yellow and silver. It just, oh, I love it. And again on the back, even down here below where you rarely see it, there's some gunk and some junk. Well, not this junk. Ooh. Even up in here, they put some scratch marks and some wear and some tear. It's amazing. They did not have to do that. You will never see that unless you get into some extreme poses, but there it is. Now, I've looked at some DLXs and, oh man, the engineering is amazing. This is smaller than the Optimus Primes I've messed with, so it's not quite the technological wonder as the bigger figures, but there is some amazing stuff going on. Like I just showed, the shoulder pads get up and out of the way. They're on a hinge. The pieces here on the crotch, it's not noticeable, but these separate out and get out of the way for leg movement. In neutral position though, well, okay, you can see the gap. It's not invisible, but it's also not apparent. It doesn't just jump out in your face. But if you do what I did just a minute ago and thought you broke it because you went to line it back up and it wasn't going back into place, that's because this whole thing is attached by a ball joint back here and you can rotate it. So if it gets turned a little bit, it'll stay gapped. You have to turn it back into position and bring it up. I know it's part of the design, the big hunky chunky feet, but it also works for action figure features like never having a problem standing this thing up, no matter how far forward you go. There are actually dumbbell joints at the shoulder and the hips that work as drop downs and butterflies. Well, what we think of as drop downs and butterflies. It just ball joints, and you can do it to the arm too. You can drop it down, bring it up, bring it forward, bring it back, and it's such a simple thing that probably wouldn't work with normal human type action figures, but when it comes to robots, you don't even think twice about it. But one of my favorite things with the big DLX figures is the torso articulation. It does have some crunch to it, and it doesn't break up. You're going to see more robotic parts. You arc back, there's some parts that you may not see in neutral position. It's not as intricate as the bigger ones. Those usually segment in 3 pieces, I think, and it forms a spine. Here, it's just the same thing, just scaled down. Going over articulation, I haven't actually popped the head off, but there is a dumbbell joint at the top of the neck, and then a ball joint down at the bottom. With that, you can look up, down, some tilt, side to side. Like I said, dumbbell joint at the shoulder, ball going into the body, ball going into the arm. You can see some rotation out there on the end. Forward, back, up, down. Because those are ball joints, it gives you rotation all the way around. The instructions command you to lift the shoulder pad before moving the arm around. There's a hinge out here on the end, get you to up there. Swivel mid bicep, double elbow, there's a hinge at the top that gets you to about right there, and then a hinge below that comes to there. Dumbbell joint at the hand too, there's a ball coming out to a ball on the end where the hand plugs on. Get some out, some in, way in, up, down, some rotation. Hinge at the torso, ball at the waist. Together, you can go that far. Not so much back. Tilt, tilt. Also with that ball joint at the waist, you can rotate to, well, all the way around. It starts hitting in places, but it's a good thing these move out of the way. Dumbbell joint at the hip, drops down, can bring this up to, good grief, and back to, oh man, and out. Look at that. There is rotation below that assembly. Double knee. Bumblebee can almost kick his own ass. Down at the ankle, it's hard to see what's going on. I think there's a hinge hidden up in here and then a hinge right above the foot. And out of the package, I thought, well, there's some forward, there's some back, but that's crashing right there. If you take it and shift the whole assembly back, well, you still don't get a lot of back. Oh, you know what? That's a ball joint up in there so that forward and back tilt at that same point. For accessories, there are 2 fists. Very nice to pop the hands off. Also get 2 relaxed hands or holding the weight of the weapon hands. And weapons means trigger finger hands, both left and right. It was hard to tell on the fists, but with the trigger finger hands and the relaxed hands, these are rubbery, so there's some flex to it, which is good because it makes it easier to hold his updated blaster. Beautiful metallic finish with a kind of dry brush, some silver, makes it look aged a bit. Let's see how this goes. Oh, easy peasy, right in the hand. Not a problem at all. Also earlier, it was easy enough to pop the head off, which is good because if Bumblebee's going into battle, he's got to have his battle head. And I know this has its roots in the classic line, but these days, It's kind of a shield. It's more protection for when he's blasting away at Decepticons, or Decepticons are blasting away at him. And I'm all for the Bumblebee face, but there's something to be said about this, especially with this overall design. It just works. They both work. Size-wise, Bumblebee stands at 4 11/16, which is too small to go with the ThreeZero DLX Transformers series. Design-wise, they fit together. This is the Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. Well, I mean, if you don't mind Bumblebee being really tiny, this works, I guess. But I'm happily surprised by this when he's standing next to the Hasbro War for Cybertron Bumblebee and Optimus Prime. Sure, it's bigger than Bumblebee and much more intricate than Hasbro's aesthetic overall, but this kind of works, right? I mean, am I crazy? Also doesn't look too bad with the amazing Yamaguchi Optimus Prime, but reverts back to tiny when you put it next to the masterpiece Optimus Prime. So at the end of the day, this thing's a little badass. And I do mean little, but not as much as I did way back at the first of this review. Getting it out of the package, getting it in hand, and realizing it's actually slightly larger than the Hasbro version of Bumblebee, it makes it feel more worth it. It's still a high price tag, but at the same time, oh man, there's a lot of engineering here. There's mixes of metal and plastic. There's design work. Whoever was QCing this at the factory did a fantastic job because there's no looseness, there's no parts popping off, and the parts that are supposed to pop off, they pop off easily, but then they don't fall off. Everything is, well, perfectly balanced. Saying that, still, it's $60. If you're used to buying imports, then you're used to the prices. That's all I can say. I wish it was cheaper. I wish it was more available because, oh, it's pretty sweet. But at the same time, it's par for the course. And with the Optimus Prime coming in this line, I want this line to give us a Megatron and a Soundwave and a few other characters, because it seems like they jump around, right? They give us a line and then they give us the main characters, however few that may be, and then move on to something else. This, I want this to stick around. This, I like big Transformers, but I'm really liking this too, especially with the 80s feel to it. It's modern, but vintage at the same time. If you enjoyed the review, comment, like, subscribe. Much love to the plus. If you're interested in seeing videos early or in a position to help out the channel, patreon.com. But wherever you may be watching this, always catch you on the Fwoosh. Most of all, if you're not into non-transforming Transformers, this isn't for you. ThreeZero puts all of their engineering into actual articulation, and that's just right up my alley. And yes, I may be sarcastic about it. I get it. You prefer transforming, and that's totally cool, but quit trying to rain on my parade. You know, this can exist along with your transforming Transformers.